How's it, Misfits? In anticipation for Borderlands 3, this video is going to be a Maya Legendary Nurse class mod, but as a purse. Starting right off, I sprayed this down with MSC to try and give it some sort of sealant primer sort of thing. Immediately after that, I just gave it a few coats of white, and then I took a pencil to it. Instead of masking everything off with tape, I just decided to sketch out the lines and kind of use a ruler. Yes, I have a Batman ruler. I decided to just make some straight lines. With a pencil and eraser on hand, I decided to sketch out the siren in the middle of the design. With the acrylics and a lot of trial and error, I tried to mix up the right color. I did a few samples to try and get the same color. It's kind of a strange, muted, sort of grayish yellow. So I'm just testing out a few different color combinations to see if I can get something that's at least similar. It's kind of hard to tell what color it actually is given how in the game it's metallic and reflects and changes its color depending on the light. With the right color mixed up, I decided to go in and just get to painting. I'm channeling everything I learned as a preschooler to just try and stay in the lines. It already comes like this, a book that you can open and just has a magnetic strip in order to keep it closed. I knew from the beginning that once I saw this thing that this is exactly what I wanted. Borderlands might be one of my favorite game series ever. I'm so excited for Borderlands 3. By the time this video is up, the game should be out. I wonder what character are you going with? I'm going for Amara. I love the idea of beating the snot out of people. I'm eager to see what they do with the Calypso twins. It'll be hard to beat Handsome Jack. He was one of my all-time favorite characters, and his voice actor made the role. Those lines were so much fun and so quotable. But I'm eager to see what the Calypso twins do. I'm particularly interested to see Troy. Is anybody else getting the special edition of Borderlands 3, or have you gotten any of the special editions from the old games? We had Borderlands 2 special edition, and that loot box is amazing. I'm so eager to see what they do with the new guns. I'm so glad that they're bringing Atlas back. It was my favorite manufacturer from Borderlands 1. Those guns feel so nice. I had seemed to mix the wrong color. These acrylics dry very dark, so I tried again with a slightly lighter color. Although this color isn't quite as dull as it is in the game, I was kind of hoping that it would be slightly opaque enough that, you know, you could see some of the orange underneath. The blue was much easier to mix up this time. It was a pretty standard blue. I already had a color that was similar in tone and brightness. I just added a little bit extra white to get it a bit brighter. And maybe a little bit of dark blue just to get it slightly duller, grayer looking. Again, I just painted on the color, tried to stay in the lines, failed to stay in the lines, and took a few coats in order to get the opacity in which you couldn't see the white or the pencil underneath anymore. I'll clean up anything that's outside the lines with the white. With that done, I just went in and tried to clean up the lines a little bit, make it so that you couldn't see some of the excess sketch marks. My eraser wasn't working very well. Okay, so apparently MSC doesn't work that great for a sealant when it comes to bendable objects. I had noticed this quite early on, I suppose, and I just tried to patch it, but it didn't work. So I went online for my answers, and I found something called Plastidip. Apparently it's something cosplayers use for Warbler, and it gives it a flexible sealant. With that in mind, I sanded away all of my mistakes, or at least most of them, and went out and bought the Plastidip. It's not exact science, this method of measuring, but it worked well enough. With a box cutter, it wasn't that hard to cut through all the layers of cardboard. I made sure to tape off the parts that I didn't want covered in Plastidip, and then took it outside for a spray paint. I used about 5 layers of Plastidip. With each coat, it takes about 30 minutes to dry. With that all primed with Plastidip, let's hope that this does better. I decided to cover the whole thing in a white base layer to help get rid of some of that ghosting from underneath. I didn't sound it well enough, I guess, but I couldn't be arsed. With the base layer done, I decided to actually try and do this right this time. Instead of pencil and the ability to go outside the line, I decided to tape everything off with masking tape. As you can kind of tell, I kind of forgot the awkward corners, but I'm okay with it being an actual square, it's fine. I mixed a better color this time, I think. I added some gray to kind of give it a dingier feeling. I think it really worked out. This took about 3 or maybe 4 coats to get it opaque enough that you can see the white underneath. Now that the yellow's done on that side, let's do the reverse. And let's make it snappy. After last time, I decided that freehand sketching was a little too hard to try and do again. So instead I printed off a copy of the siren on the front and printed it out. Then I took an X-Acto knife and cut out the shape. It's not a perfect stencil, a lot of things bleed through, but I can always come back with a white and try and clean up the edges of the lines. After all of the colors were on and dry, I decided to go in with a black Sharpie and try to get the cell shading. I pretty much just freehanded everything and tried to kind of figure out where things would be. At this point I figured out that I hadn't done the corners right, but I just kind of went with it. I think this step takes it a long way into looking like something out of Borderlands. I couldn't find the corner pieces or anything that would be substituted for it. I thought about leaving them out entirely, but I decided to try and sketch them in. I think they look okay, although it is very obvious from up close. After all of the Sharpie was done, I decided to go over it with some Mod Podge. It's supposed to be pretty flexible as a sealant, so I wanted to use that, especially with the crease in the spine. I think it worked really well, and it really finishes the whole look. I used about 3 coats of Mod Podge, letting it dry for about a half an hour in between. And we're dry! I am so happy with how this looks and feels, especially after all the Mod Podge. Now it's time to take off the tape. And now I've got some fabric. I decided I wanted to line this thing as well as create a kind of catch to keep my stuff from spilling out and all over the floor every time I opened the thing. I probably could have done this better, but I didn't know where my sewing machine was and it was really crunch time to try and get this done. I wasn't as worried about how it would look on the inside. I just wanted it to be protected so I didn't scratch my phone. This is also where I make the straps that go through the book, the ones that loop onto the belt. I'm pretty much just cutting rectangles. I didn't want to sew anything down, so I just folded everything over. Looping the fabric through, I used some hot glue to glue it on the inside, and it seems sturdy enough. I wanted to do this before the lining so it'd have a bit of an extra protection by putting the lining over top. It'd also look a little better. As for the pocket, I just took a certain length of fabric, folded it over, and stuck it in. This really wasn't pretty, but I was just trying to make it functional. At one point I ran out of hot glue, so I decided to staple everything down instead. Using some hot glue and a bunch of staples, this thing is pretty much done. Here you can see the full thing, and all I did was glue the lining on the inside and went from there. For an after-action report, I would say that I probably could have done the inside a little bit better, a little bit neater, but I wasn't too concerned with it. I was more worried about the time. I don't know if I would change having done it the way I did beforehand. Now I would, but going into it, I didn't really know what I needed or what I was missing. So I didn't really know how to solve the problems I didn't understand. As it sits, I'm really happy to have this thing, so. With all that said, I wish you guys well. Bye!